Given the existence of a treatment that is curing cancer at a rate that traditional medicine could only dream of, and doing so without any damaging side effects, most would assume that every penny of our tax dollars allocated for cancer research would be thrown in Dr. Brzezinski's direction.
The problem that we face, however, is that a huge financial house has been built on the paradigm of purging the body of cancer cells. Brzezinski's discovery means that the foundation, the walls, and the roof of that house need to be replaced. Think about it. You know, you've got thousands of doctors in oncology and in oncology residency programs. You've got the pharmaceutical industry pumping out chemotherapeutic agents every month. There are all kinds of machines that deliver radiation. You got all this stuff in the war on cancer, and it's trillions of dollars. I find it very interesting that we have all these walks for the cure of cancer. You got all the wristbands. You got all the donations. We're going to find a cure this decade. All this money keeps pouring in, and it all goes to the same guys.
The pharmaceutical industry is arguably the most profitable industry on our planet, with its profits being triple that of all of the Fortune 500 companies. Rising profits result in rising stock prices. The only way this industry can sustain this profitable momentum is by continuing to introduce new patented drugs. And since the pharmaceutical industry relies on the FDA as its gatekeeper to introduce these new drugs, it's in their best interest to ensure the FDA remains as compliant as possible. And since the FDA is also an office of the United States government, it's in the government's best interest to preserve one of its most powerful industries. The former editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, Dr. Marcia Angel, has been very outspoken with the idea that it's time to take the Food and Drug Administration back from the drug companies. In 1992, Congress put the fox in the chicken coop. It passed the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, which authorizes drug companies to pay user fees to the FDA for each brand name drug considered for approval. The User Fee Act put the FDA on the payroll of the industry it regulates, and it has drastically changed the way it operates. The part of the agency that reviews new drugs now gets more than half of its money from the pharmaceutical industry. The FDA's coziness with industry is underscored by the composition of its 18 advisory committees, outside experts who help evaluate drugs. Incredibly, many of these advisors work as consultants for drug companies. The FDA behaves as though the pharmaceutical industry is its user, not the public. In 2010, the fee revenue paid by the pharmaceutical industry to the FDA has risen to over $500 million annually. Pharma now pays over $1.4 million per application for most cancer drugs submitted to the FDA to ensure a timely approval. It's important to understand that neither Congress or the FDA had requested this new fee structure to occur. Instead, pharma itself went to Congress and imposed these new fees onto the FDA, in essence, purchasing the FDA's Drug Evaluation Department from both the government and the public. In a 2007 health policy report sponsored by Pfizer, supporting the renewal of these user fees, they revealed that the median review time for priority drugs, those for serious life-threatening diseases that lack satisfactory treatments such as cancer, was sped up from 21 months in 1993 to 6 months in 2004. Dozens of cancer therapies have been reviewed and approved within 3 or 4 months. Meanwhile, Dr. Brzezinski, his patients, and other supporting scientists have made every conceivable effort to get the FDA, and thus the government, to cooperate in the research, review, and approval of anti-neoplastons since 1977.
Before I started I asked the lawyers for the advice. Can I use experimental treatment, which was the treatment with antioplastons? Can I use this in my private practice, and can I be involved in cancer research? Simple as the private company.
Dr. Brzezinski's attorneys investigated both state and federal law to find out if it was legal for him to start his own biomedical research company, making antineoplastons and administering them to his patients within his private practice. They found that according to both the Texas state and federal law, the use of any drug or new drug can be used to meet the immediate needs of the patients of a licensed doctor, particularly when there is no other available option for them. The law stated that such activity was not governed at the time by the Texas Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and is not otherwise unlawful under the laws of the state of Texas. However, Dr. Brzezinski would not be legally allowed to introduce or deliver antineoplastons into interstate commerce, which means he had to keep his activities only within the state of Texas to avoid breaking any federal laws. As long as he did this, his actions were not within the regulatory authority of the FDA. However, once word began to spread that Dr. Brzezinski was successfully treating what was once considered terminal incurable cancer patients, people began traveling from all over the country to receive antineoplaston treatment.
For a long time, I didn't have any contact with Texas Board of Medical Examiners until around 1984. Some of my patients told me that they were approached by the agents sent to them from Texas Board of Medical Examiners, who were trying to convince them to file complaints against me. So this was shocking to me. And what is surprising, that they were using the state money, they were using taxpayers' money to travel a long distance, like from Houston to California, to convince our patients who were in California to file complaints against me. This was completely irrational. But nothing else happened at the time until I met, by coincidence, the vice president of MD Anderson Cancer Center, Dr. Hickey, who informed me that I will have problems this time with Texas Board of Medical Examiners. And obviously the problems began. And I was called to Texas Board of Medical Examiners. They began investigating me. However, there were no complaints from the patients. The patients were happy. We were treating patients who were very advanced, for whom there was no treatment available, and they were getting good results. So apparently there was no justification for such action. This was a very unpleasant investigation. They were trying to convince me again to stop my research, to stop treating patients. After about 2 years of going back and forth and being called to the board, finally they proposed to me that I should present to them a number of cases of patients who benefited from my practice. And they informed me that such medical records will be reviewed by expert oncologist, and if they are satisfied that I am not harming patients, that the patients are benefiting from my activity, then they will leave me in peace. I was very happy with this. I believe that Texas Board will do objective review of our results, and finally they will leave me alone, because we had amazing results in the treatment of very difficult cancer cases. I supplied to them twice as many medical records, which show without any doubt great results in the cancer treatment. Incurable forms of cancer completely disappearing, with patients going to complete remission, and patients who were cured and living normal life after that.
In 1986, Dr. Brzezinski agreed to present to the Texas State Board of Medical Examiners 40 cases of various types of cancer he had successfully treated using antineoplastons in patients ranging from breast, bladder, lung, liver, brain, head and neck, and lymphoma. After submitting these cases to the medical board, he didn't hear back from them, leaving him to assume that the board was satisfied and would leave him in peace. However, 2 years later, the board came back again, pretended that the cases he submitted were not successful, and claimed he was violating a law that didn't exist, which was grounds for the board to cancel, revoke, or suspend his license.
It was a shock to me. I believed in justice, I believe in high ethics of the board, but this was just a lie.
The medical board had no case against Brzezinski, which prompted the board to file their first amended complaint in 1990, Still, the board had no case, which prompted them to file a second amended complaint in 1992. The medical board kept coming back each time with the same argument, practically making Xerox copies of their prior claims, changing the titles, and simply resubmitting them. After about 5 years of this, 60 of Dr. Brzezinski's patients petitioned the board to stop harassing their doctor. The board then tried to ignore these petitions by attempting to strike them from the record. Finally, in May of 1993, this case went to trial.
The tumors will grow, they will lose the vision, they will be paralyzed, and they will die, because there's nothing in the world which can be used to save these patients' life.
You intend to continue doing just what you've been doing until somebody is able to stop you. Is that not true?
I'm going to do what the law will allow me to do, Mr. Helcom. I do whatever is necessary to bring my medicines to approval in the United States and everywhere in the world, and bring you to justice for causing the deaths of 200 patients. And they will come back here to haunt you until we are dead.
Are you threatening me, Dr. Brzezinski?
I'm not threatening you, but that's what's going to happen in the future.
Well, I think that's something that remains to be seen.
I had never heard of Dr. Brzezinski. I didn't know anything about him. I never was quite clear what the board's problem was. The board did not bring any expert witnesses to contest points that were raised by Dr. Brzezinski. Now, without an expert witness to render an opinion in certain areas, I can't give any credence to opinion raised by a layman. And Dr. Brzezinski brought in Dr. Nicholas Petronas.
Some of the most dramatic testimony on Dr. Brzezinski's behalf came from Dr. Nicholas Petronas,
Doctor, I want you to see up here.
a Georgetown University expert who was a member of the National Cancer Institute's team that analyzed 7 of Dr. Brzezinski's cases.
The basic conclusion was that in 5 of the patients with brain tumors that were fairly large, the tumor resolved, disappeared. It's amazing. The fact that they are living, it's impressive and unbelievable.
He was quite a witness. He said he had never seen anything like what Dr. Brzezinski was able to accomplish with his anti-neoplastons in brain cancer. He had one young boy there who had been treated. He was about 12 at the hearing, strapping lad, good-sized boy. But when he was first started on treatment when he was about 4 years old, I think his name was Paul, he was given up on by his original doctor.
When Mary Michaels took the stand on behalf of her son Paul, she trained her eyes on the state's attorney.
I mean, I have enough to worry about when I go to bed at night about my son and my family. I don't need to worry that this treatment's going to be taken away.
What do you think might happen if... Oh, never mind. Never mind. I have no other questions.
For all I know, the kid may still be alive.
The judge ruled in Dr. Brzezinski's favor, finding that the medical board did not introduce any evidence at the hearing that anti-neoplastons are not safe and effective, nor did they introduce any competent or substantial evidence at the hearing that anti-neoplastons are not generally recognized by experts qualified by scientific training and experience to evaluate their safety and effectiveness. And as far as the law goes, it does not apply to a licensed physician who manufactures his own medications and solely uses it on his own patients in the state of Texas. Now, most would think that at this point the Texas Medical Board would stop wasting their time, Brzezinski's time, terminal cancer patients' time, and the taxpayers' money pursuing a case they knew they couldn't win.
Then they told me after they were going to rewrite my proposal for decision and take adverse action against Dr. Brzezinski, and I said I thought that was rather foolish.
Well, think again.
The state of Texas wants Houston doctor Stanislav Brzezinski to stop treating his patients with drugs he produces at his own pharmaceutical plant. The drugs called anti-neoplastons are non-toxic compounds of proteins and amino acids, often lacking in cancer patients. Even though the state of Texas acknowledges that the drugs may be helping some who are terminally ill, The state says the drugs shouldn't be used. This is the State Board of Medical Examiners, which licenses doctors in Texas. This is the agency